Yeah? Okay. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Menno van der Veen. I'm the moderator of, I think it's behind me, the 11th edition, I think it says, of Bike and the City. Who's been here more than 6 times already? That's one. Wow. Yeah. Good. So you will be our guests of honor, and you definitely have the right to ask at least one question or make one statement tonight. Um, who's here for the first time? Oh wow! Well, we also got a new organizer actually. So she brought in a new crowd. That's also nice. Um, we have many speakers tonight. Some are online with us using Skype, or at least we hope so. And there's a couple of people who are right here. I'll introduce them later. But they're always interested to find out what kind of audience we actually attracted tonight. So let's start by asking the most important question. Who's really in love with cars and limousines and Hummers? Yeah, a couple, yeah. What do you like so much about them?
I study industrial design, and my specialization is transportation design. So
Okay.
last year I worked for Daimler, so it's car design.
Okay. That's good, right? And we're going to convince you that there's actually nothing to love about those cars. Who would consider him or herself a cycling activist here? So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you offended about 8 people, but that's okay. Who's professionally involved with cycling by working for some cycling company or whatever? Yeah. And who is interested as in cycling as a student specializing in cycling, or as a scientist, or both? Scientist also a profession, right? Oh, that's also quite a few people. So together we probably all know a lot more, almost everything, I would say. Yeah. And I know almost nothing. So, um, hmm? The general who's, yeah, that's also interesting. That's as a final question. Who's just a cyclist who just loves to ride his bike? Yeah. In the end, yeah, we're all just we just love our bicycles, yes, and our headphones that come with them, right? And talking to our friends while riding our bicycles. Tonight we're going to visit virtually, because we are already in Amsterdam, of course, but we're also interested tonight in Copenhagen and London. For those of you who, like me, are chauvinists, it was a big disappointment, of course, that last year all of a sudden Copenhagen turned out to be cycling capital of the world. That's quite a prize they got there, right? And we're going to convince Clotilde Imbert, who is going to tell us all about Copenhagen, that she's not right. Okay, so that's up to you. That it should be easy to convince people from London that they are not the cycling capital of the world, but they did invest a lot of money, which is 770 million pounds. That used to be a lot of money, but now I think it's only 800 million or something. But still, so they want to become somewhat of a cycling capital, or at least a cycling metropole. We have actually 2 people, one who's now in Sydney, and one who's sitting here right in front of us. And I forgot your last name, but that's Stones. Adams, Mr. Adams Stones. He's already there. So Copenhagen, London, and Amsterdam. What are the typical cyclists? What are the challenges of those cities? What can we learn from each other? It's going to be quite some people talking to you. And in the end, we have the cycle mayor of Amsterdam to wrap it all up with us. So that's good to know, right? And that's also where we have more time for discussion. So you're going to listen to a lot of speakers, see some slides and presentations. And we try to ensure that in the end there is plenty of room for your questions or statements. And if it isn't enough, there's quite a good bar here downstairs. So we could all have a whiskey or whatever your drink is, and then discuss further. But for now, we're going to start with our keynote of tonight, Meredith Glaser. Yeah, that's what we only have one keynote presentation, and that's Meredith Glaser. She has been working on cycling topics for 4 years or even more. She spent her summers in Copenhagen, also worked with Copenhagenize and knows all about cycling in Copenhagen, but she is here because she also knows a lot about London, and she is involved with the Urban Cycling Institute of the University of Amsterdam. And she will give us an overview of 3 cities cycling in Amsterdam, London, and Copenhagen. Meredith Glaser. No, not London.
Wow, thank you for that really great introduction. I will focus, however, mostly on Amsterdam, but I think we have lots to learn from each other. So then I will let everybody else talk about their special cities. So how do we build a cycling city? This was the question I was posed, or how can we? What can we learn from Amsterdam? When city leaders come to Amsterdam to learn about urban cycling, several assumptions, or also what I call myths, bubble to the surface every time. There are many, and I'm only going to address 3 of the most common ones that I hear. By the way, it's so nice to see so many familiar faces in the crowd. So thank you all for coming. So first of all, infrastructure, especially Dutch infrastructure, is absolutely sufficient, and if we build it, people will come. 2, cycling is an alternative to driving, and it maybe can even completely replace driving. And 3, master plans or vision plans, policy documents will be our absolute saving grace. Let's just write them or rewrite them, and change will follow. So many people have this belief in this logic of build it and they will come. They believe that building Dutch cycling infrastructure will be sufficient to ensure a cycling city and to promote cycling levels, to increase cycling levels. But I think this is a problematic statement for a couple of reasons. If we dissect this statement, we see this action, build it, and a reaction, they will come. We see this cause and effect. And we also see a very physical, spatial element of building something, and then a behavioral element that they will come, people will ride. These are 2, I think, different worlds, but they do relate to each other. So this graph tells us about the percentage of trips by bike over time and across many Dutch cities. But it also tells us other stories. For example, it tells us that there are differences between cities. Sometimes there are vast differences, sometimes not so much. It also tells us that over time, these numbers have changed. They've sometimes increased or decreased or stayed the same to certain extents. And finally, by using this graph, I think we can try to tease apart some spatial differences between cities in order to reveal some more common characteristics of perhaps better performing cycling cities or worse performing cycling cities. And since we're in Amsterdam, I would like to use Amsterdam. So you can look at the one on the very, very left. And since Rotterdam is our most friendly rival, I will use Rotterdam, so the one just next to it. So you can see these pretty large differences. And of course, the goal here is not to condemn in any way or to praise, but just to notice differences and to learn from each other. And so from a spatial perspective and just an urban perspective, how many of you have been to Rotterdam? Okay, good. I lived in Rotterdam for about 1.5 years, and every day I was confronted by a Rotterdammer saying something like, "Did you know that this city was bombed?" And every day, it's a real part of their identity, right? That it was rebuilt, that it's very different from other Dutch cities. And so from the spatial perspective, of course, these cities are very different. But just by looking at their infrastructure, their primary bicycle networks, yes, Amsterdam maybe is a little more dense, but really there's not that much difference, is there? So infrastructure alone doesn't seem to be that great of an explanation for a 15 to 20% difference in bicycle mode share. So what are some other possible reasons that cycling rates are so much higher in Amsterdam or lower in Rotterdam? Well, an entire transport system does not stand on its own. It is inherently linked to how accessible destinations are to reach. And those destinations are governed by land use regulations, by patterns, which in turn influence our activities and our behaviors around mobility. So when we examine Amsterdam and Rotterdam, maybe we should look at those differences as well, the differences in land uses. Maybe this will give us cues about behavior. So when you think of land use, something that you do on a daily basis or strive to do on a daily basis, eat. And where do you go for that? You go to the grocery store. So a very non-academic fashion, you can go to Google Maps and you can just type in supermarket. And you see not so much of a citywide pattern, but you see all these clusters and concentrations. And in this dense urban core in the center, maybe I can use this here. In the dense urban core, supermarkets look like they just kind of popped up everywhere. It's on small residential streets, on bigger streets, just not really a big pattern. And all of these, they look like they're probably bikeable or walkable distances from where people live. But if we look out here to the west area, we do see some more nuances of patterns maybe. Where the density is a little bit lower, we see this pattern is different. And then we see that the clusters form on larger roads, on intersections. Maybe they're tram stops or metro stops. And we can visualize these differences, just general observations. This is a supermarket that's in the pipe, closest to me. There's an Albert Heijn, there really is an Albert Heijn, and it's tucked right in here. And it's huge, it's an XL. So it goes way back in there, but it's sort of hidden, it's meshed, it's embedded in this dense urban fabric. And by the way, there's no dedicated car parking spots, right? There's only some bike parking spots, and it's on a tram line, so there's probably a lot of people walking and biking. If you compare that to the picture below, which is from Postjesweg out, is it out here? We see something very different. We see dedicated car parking spots. We see a few bike spots. They're back there. We see this guy on the scooter. So we see some differences just in visualizing these two locations. Also in design and space, right? That the top one is, again, it's enmeshed. It's embedded in the urban fabric, and below you see this more larger, taking up a lot more space type of venue. So in Rotterdam, if we do the same very rigorous analysis, that's more shoddy map analysis, but anyways, you see a much more apparent pattern. You see these lines forming along more major axes and arterial roads. And this isn't, this is, there's no it's no coincidence that these supermarkets are placed here. They're the busiest tram and metro stops and metro lines in Rotterdam. Rotterdam has wildly better public transportation network and accessibility than Amsterdam. And people use it more. So yes, again, we're making some very broad sweeping generalizations about observations, but grocers are only accommodating a demand that they see. They are seeing either more people coming by car, by bike, by metro, and they're tuning into that need and placing their stores there. So, and travel behavior data does relatively correspond to these observations. In West, we see that people are taking their cars, they're taking public transit more than biking. And although 28% mode share of bikes, that's, any city would be drooling over that, right? We have to remember that. But at the heart of this is that social, spatial, and environmental influences, these aspects really influence travel behavior. And I assure you, it's not about the lack of cycling infrastructure, right? In fact, it's best practice cycling infrastructure. This is beautiful infrastructure, right? There's a dedicated Dutch-style roundabout, prioritized for bikes. There's this 2-meter wide, lovely red carpet rolled out for cyclists. So even when the infrastructure is perfect and it's best practice, that does not mean people will use it. because there's this complex web of interactions that go much beyond the transport system. And we just touched the surface here. We didn't even go into demographics and housing and economics. So we can't just hope that a transport system will support itself without also thinking very carefully and strategically about where people are going, who those people are, what they are doing, and how they are getting there. If we don't take into consideration these three other really important aspects, we're just jumping ahead of ourselves and we're not taking advantage of the whole system. So at first glance, it may seem that bicycle infrastructure is the answer to all our urban challenges, or at least bicycle challenges, but it's more complicated than that. So I would propose amending this phrase slightly and say, yes, infrastructure is a part of it, build it, but connect it to meaningful destinations, put it in a robust network, maybe traffic calm the area as well, then maintain it, market it, sell it, evaluate it, adjust it, and then maybe, just maybe over time, people will come. So, is cycling an alternative to the car? Will cycling absolutely replace driving? So my dad was here in Amsterdam visiting from California, and we having this conversation about biking, of course, and he said, I love biking in Amsterdam. It's just so great. It's so easy, but it's so impractical for California, honey. It's just never going to happen, he said. And I said, no kidding, it's not, no kidding. But what if you had, he was also telling me that, I drive my car 20 minutes or 20 miles or so to work every day. So, it's just really not practical. So I said, but what if you had access to a train station that was 10 minutes from your, from home? And what if that train ran every 5 minutes? And it wasn't delayed like all the traffic on the highway? And what if, when you got to your destination station, you had a bike waiting for you, and you rode the last mile to work? And he sort of thought, well, that sort of sounds like the system here. I said, yeah, exactly. So there's this really special thing going on with the bike and train. And if you look at acceptable walking distances to all types of train stations in the Netherlands, only 1/5 of the population would be in reach. And these are all different stations, with different destinations and different cities, different towns. So, for example, if you live within walking distance to a large intercity station, but you're actually going to a small town that's only served by a stop train, then your mobility reach is going to be pretty limited, and you might end up having to take a Uber or something. But if you look at acceptable biking distance, which is about 20 minutes by bike or so, then that dramatically increases your reach, and 80% of the population would have access to a train, and not only one train station, but almost 3.5 train stations. So, in short, it shows that transit itself has a limited reach, but when you combine it with cycling, we're creating a fundamentally different transportation system. And so when we think about the original ideas of a transit city, we think of transit-oriented development. This is how it would be visualized, with these little nodes, and each with their specific catchment radius. But the bike train system is radically different, and it provides much more choice and much more options. And this is how it plays out in the Netherlands. So we're here in Amsterdam in like the darkest red spot there. And so depending where I need to go, I can choose from 5 or 6 different train stations that are within a 10 to 20 minute bike ride of my home. And that gives me access to more than 200 different destinations. That's incredible. And plus 47% of all train passengers arrive at the station by bike. So the bicycle here is actually a feeder system. And it feeds into this larger transportation network, this dense, high-service train system. The entire railways of the Netherlands would not be viable without the bicycle and without this feeder system. So can cycling replace driving? Maybe, but I would say that cycling plus a dense and high service transit network can certainly start to replace driving. So when other city officials come to the Netherlands to learn about cycling, one of their first questions, they get all excited and they go, oh, where's the plan? Where's the plan? Show me the plan. I want to copy it. I want to look at it. I want to read it, and I want to paste it into my city. And we're always met with great disappointment and questions when we then have to say, sorry, there really was no plan. Because it wasn't until the late 90s, maybe late 80s and early 90s that the government and local municipalities started to draw up something like a plan, like policies and design standards. And it's not to say that these weren't important plans. These were very important plans. They were significant and they were historical, especially, such as the sustainable safety policy. But they were more like reactions to the current events at the time. And they were very contentious and they were very political. So what was happening at that time before these plans were put in place? What were these plans a reaction to? So if we step back into history a little bit, what you're looking at is an index of different bicycle modes over time and across many different European cities. And we see, again, a lot of stories going on here. We first have this birth of the bicycle, and yet the beginning is not really shown here. And then we have this really sad story of decline. But we also have, tucked in there is the war, is the automobile, the birth of the automobile moving into cities. And then finally we have this story of resurgence and recovery. And I think what's really interesting is this little blip right here of time between 2 and 3. And that's when this entire cultural and societal shift and transition was happening. There were these fantasies of car-dominated futures. And this all happened within the span of a couple decades. The car just, had been able to dismantle and disrupt an already quite matured cycling culture. But more than culture change, Amsterdam was physically making space for the car. The dense, tight-knit medieval city center was really problematic for the car, for moving it, for storing, for parking, all these things. So, neighborhoods were being torn down, big roads were being designed, a highway bisecting the entire city with the metro underneath, big modern buildings on the side of the building. This was progress. And they were really trying hard to squeeze in these clunky vehicles. I mean, you can also see here, this is Newmarkt. And Newmarkt was being used as a parking lot. So they were really trying hard. They were really finding space in the city for the vehicle. And besides massive parking challenges and the need to tear down entire neighborhoods, another clue that the transition was very disruptive was deaths. There were a lot of traffic deaths, and something like a quarter of them were children. Because people and children, they were used to using the streets as their own public space, as their own living room. And once people started driving cars, this whole paradigm shifted and turned around. Oops, sorry. And this devastation was not tolerated. It was not accepted to many citizens, and the people started fighting back. They protested, and especially in Amsterdam, these protests were huge. They were violent. Some people died, but really at the heart of it, it wasn't necessarily about bikes. It was about about social equality, social justice. It was about safe streets. It was about regaining that urban vitality back to the streets. At the same time, a massive oil crisis was going on. So while in the U.S., car drivers had to queue for gas and they had to pay a premium, the Dutch government decided let's car-free days. So 1 day a week, no cars. And this really gave a renewed sense of joy and freedom to the people. It was a sense of the old days. So there's this confluence of events, the riots, the deaths, oil embargo, car parking, all of this. It made city officials way more aware. And over time, policies came, parking fees came, traffic calming came, and the scar of the would-be highway was also healed. And a byproduct of these changes were more safe and attractive spaces for people walking and cycling. But it wasn't easy. In fact, the 1992 traffic referendum in Amsterdam, this was a plan, very ambitious plan to reduce traffic in the city by about 50% and initiate parking fees and fines and to retrofit streets with sidewalks and bike lanes. But it only won by 1 vote. So this was a very contested battle. It was a very political battle. But change did come slowly, surely, curb by curb, street by street. And what we see today is a result of that consistent, long-term struggle for change. But again, it didn't start from one policy and one plan. It's been this constant process of evaluation and consistent prioritizing. And we can still see these changes on a yearly basis, on a weekly basis here in the streets today, where the city is redesigning several major intersections and whole streets, whole corridors, based partly on findings from behavioral studies like the one Copenhagenized and the University of Amsterdam did. And to accomplish these changes, the city is going around standard manuals and design standards, and they're testing new ideas. And I think the result is absolutely remarkable. In fact, the city's most recent policy is basically fast-tracking good ideas to implementation in order to test them in real time. And this is only one example. We could have a whole nother night on experiments in the city. So we have to take master planning with a grain of salt and make sure that we take into account not only what's happened in the past, but also allowing for experimentation and flexibility in the future. Because to design cities for people, we have to listen to them, we have to watch them, we have to observe them, and then we have to rewrite those plans. So to refresh, Dutch-style infrastructure can work, or Danish, whatever. But it must be combined with the appropriate urban fabric and a complete network that gets people where they want to go. 2, the bike is not a replacement for the car, but the bike can feed this system, can feed a greater system of transportation, and then possibly replace the car. And finally, a master plan can help, but it isn't necessarily the basis for progress. We have to make room for experimentation and direct observation to allow for other innovations to happen. So what can other cities learn from Amsterdam? Although it's possibly it's impossible, and we don't necessarily want to replicate the Dutch cycling story in today, but we can see a lot of similarities across other cities. We can see the struggle happening. We can see these social movements. We can see the disruption, the fight for space, the fight for rights. Clearly, there's a similar trajectory going on across a lot of global cities right now. But it's not something we can exactly influence. What is replicable, I think, and what we can influence is the choices that our city leaders are facing today. And the choice is not necessarily to be anti-car or against cars and pro-bike, for bikes. The choice is to favor people and places. And the subsequent decisions after that choice need to follow that commitment. It wasn't easy for Amsterdam, and it won't be easy for other cities, but transformational change is never a walk in the park. But it's often very difficult for these city leaders to imagine what a city would look like or feel like if it was any different from what it is today. And I think that's where Amsterdam and Copenhagen have a role to play, because these are mature cycling cities. They can share their knowledge, they can share their histories, their stories, and I think they have an obligation to do so. I think sharing this knowledge will help other leaders embrace the complex nature of long-term transition. And I think it will give others a sense, their own sense of agency. And finally, by offering our streets like this, Amsterdam streets and Danish streets, as a learning ground, other city leaders are invited to come here and to feel what it feels like to live and play in a cycling city and to live a life by bike. And hopefully by doing this, they too can start to imagine their city in a different way and realize that riding a bike all the while is just icing on the cake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meredith. What was especially nice, well, just for me, is that I thought I had learned something about Copenhagen, and I ended up seeing my own local bakery in one of your slides. But you'll be back in an hour or so. But maybe at this moment, there's already one or two urgent questions that really need to be answered before we move to Sydney to talk about London while doing that from Amsterdam. But still, anyone who's got... well, then I have one, and maybe you could... this point, right, and we love, in the Netherlands, of course, we love to blame the Germans for everything. But I thought, yeah, sure, because Rotterdam is being bombed, they have this infrastructure, this Wieboudstraat infrastructure, with these supermarkets near Metroline. So it seemed as if your presentation was actually more or less feeding, at least my prejudice, that because Rotterdam was bombed and it had such a modern car and transit infrastructure, that's why they don't bike as much as here. But you seem to say the opposite. You said, well, everybody was saying that, but it's a myth. It's got nothing to do with the bombing of the center.
No, I don't think that's not what I meant. But can you maybe rephrase your question?
Well, you said infrastructure doesn't matter, and then you came up with these supermarket dots. And I thought, well, the reason why people in Amsterdam cycle is because they have to, because it's almost impossible to get there anywhere else but by bicycle. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Rotterdam, which was bombed, you can easily reach those same supermarkets by, as you told us, using the transit network. Mm-hmm. But the myth you were telling us that the myth is not true. That the myth is...
Well, the myth that I was trying to bust or whatever was build it and they will come, right? Mm-hmm. So I was trying to tease out that, having this action-reaction type of statement that, absolutely build infrastructure and it will come, slap down the bicycle infrastructure and people will ride.
So it may explain why Rotterdam doesn't bike as much in the center, but it doesn't give you the recipe to change that behavior, that myth.
No, and the point was to look at all these other interactions, this complex web of land use, of activities, of destinations, that these have to be meaningful to people. They have to want to bike there. We can't just lay a piece of Dutch-style infrastructure in the middle of nowhere and expect people to ride it.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Maybe only for me, but you already on it. It's always nice to hear things twice, right? So you remember better. So don't just build the infrastructure. Thank you so much for now, Meredith. And I'm going to look at our organizers. Crystal, is Mark Ames already here with us? It's 6 a.m. in Sydney. Mark Ames is supposed to be awake. It's 47 degrees Celsius or whatever, so he should be an early riser, right? But he is, maybe some of you know him because he had a somewhat well-read blog called I Bike London about his experiences riding his bicycles in London. Mark, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly. You can hear us too?
Yes, I can. Good evening to you, or should I say good morning?
We should say good morning to you, I suppose. Yeah. There are about 1,000 people sitting here waiting to hear all about your experiences. But maybe just to introduce, we have Adam Stones. Adam, maybe it's best to stay there because otherwise you can't see Mark's presentation. But he knows quite a lot about London and campaigning in London in order to get people to ride their bicycles as well. So he will respond to your presentation. You knew this, or you understand me, right? Nodding means yes, I hear you.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Now, before we move to London, since you're there anyway, how is riding your bicycle in Sydney?
Yeah, so I seem to have a thing about living in cities which have a challenging cycling environment. So I've moved from London to Sydney, where I'm working with a couple of clients. And actually, Sydney has a terrible reputation for cycling internationally,
Mm-hmm.
but whisper it quietly. It's not that bad. It's making some progress. So that's good news.
All right. And your clients, you are teaching people to build bicycle friendly environments there, or are your clients in a totally different field now?
No, absolutely. So, working on making more sustainable cities. And Meredith touched on this, but the bicycle is one of those tools, but it's just part of it. But it helps to unlock so much. And I think that's why there's this international conversation now about the place of bikes in cities.
Okay. Thanks. And maybe next time we'll invite you again, and then we'll talk. Then you'll be in Tokyo, and we'll talk about Sydney. Um, but for now, we're looking at a picture from London that more or less is explanatory for our first question. That is, when you think about London, what are the typical conditions for a cyclist over there?
Yeah, I mean, London is a cycling enigma. As you can see in the photographs, there are lots of places where it is not a safe or friendly place to ride a bicycle. And yet, it has really fantastic geography for cycling. It's reasonably compact, it's flat, it's very dry for most of the year, unlike the west of the United Kingdom. And there's lots of recreational cycle paths along green spaces, so along the canal network in the city, through parks, along quieter roads. And where progress has been made, it hasn't been made because of just one thing. More people have started to ride in London for a number of reasons. So the cost and the crowding on public transport, the introduction of the congestion charge, the fee to pay to drive your car in the city centre. Way back in 2005, we had a terrorist bombing of the tube network, and that led to a lot of the network being closed for about 6 months. That led to a spike in riding numbers. So it was all of these things in addition to the introduction of better cycling facilities. And that's been against a backdrop of a consistent downward trend in the volume of private motor traffic in the centre of the city for about 10 years now. So, it's an interesting landscape that has led to more people riding. With regards to infrastructure, hopes for better infrastructure for cyclists really arrived in 2008 with the election of Boris Johnson. He was the Conservative mayor of London, and he was also a cyclist. So he delivered a bike share scheme, and in his first term built the first of London's cycle superhighways, which I think you Dutch people would just call bike paths. They're bike routes on main roads that lead into the city centre. The first of those routes, they were actually just painted lanes. You can see some of them on the screen there. They were shared with other traffic, and they were considered dangerous and controversial by the cycling community. And very sadly, there was a spate of high profile and quite shocking deaths on these routes. And that forced the community to take action and to be very vocal about demanding higher quality infrastructure, which is actually separated from traffic and suitable for a much wider range of riders, including young people and old people. And those demands led to quite significant protests and rallies actually on the streets. And so that led to better cycling infrastructure being built, proper cycling infrastructure. And the first of those two new routes opened in 2015, and they've been wildly popular. They're not perfect, but they can certainly be described as the best and the most successful cycling infrastructure in London today.
Mark, just for 1 second, while we are looking at one of these protests, I suppose, maybe just to explain a bit more, you started with saying, well, it's a mixed scheme in London, but there are great recreational paths. But the paths you're now talking about, they are supposed to replace, how would you call that? The daily transport systems of commuters. So people are now
Yes.
taking bicycles instead of driving a car or a bus or taking the subway.
Yes, that's right. So the initial impetus to deliver cycling infrastructure that came from the Transport Authority in London didn't come from the roads division of the Transport Authority. It came from the public transport side of the Transport Authority because they were desperate to alleviate congestion on the transit network. As I'm sure you know, London has a very comprehensive underground system, the tube, and congestion on the tube at peak times is pretty spectacular. It's very, very, very busy. So initially, the authorities were saying we would like to try and alleviate some of this congestion by encouraging cycling. And first they started with these painted lanes, and then they started with slightly larger painted lanes, and that grew the community enough that the community was then significant enough politically to be able to say, okay, we want proper cycling infrastructure to do exactly as you say, to create an environment where it's safe to commute at peak times.
And who is this community? Are they typical house fathers with their daughters, or are they more activists, daredevils? What kind of people make up the cycling community of London?
Sure, sure. So the number of people riding in London, it's been growing every year since the year 2000. In 2000, there were about 290,000 bicycle trips a day, and now there are more than 670,000 bicycle trips a day. To give you some scale, that's comparable to the amount of bike trips which are being taken in Amsterdam every day. So look out, Amsterdam. But of course, London has a much larger population. So when you consider bike trips by modal share, compare it with the number of trips taken by all other modes of transport, including public transport, cycling represents about 3% of all trips in Greater London. But in certain locations in the city centre, cyclists now consist of more than 50% of the traffic on the road. Including in particularly busy locations like Blackfriars Bridge, which goes over the River Thames. In terms of who these people are, there's a very strong gender imbalance among London's cyclists. Only about 25% of London's cyclists are female, so 75% are male, and amongst those male cyclists, furthermore, young men aged 20 to 35 years old are significantly overrepresented. With the introduction of new separated cycle routes, it is becoming more common to see older people, children, mothers, cargo bikes, all riding, but it's certainly not common or unremarkable like it is in the Netherlands. So it's changing, but for a long time, yeah, absolutely, it was just kind of the young and the fit and the brave.
And the young and the fit and the brave, yeah. And as to we didn't talk about it that much yet, but there also seems to be a difference, quite a difference in as to ethnical backgrounds. And if you look at the pictures here, they look pretty English to us in an old-fashioned way, but it's not as globalized and cosmopolitan as your regular London tube would be. Is that also an issue that these are typical people from typical ethnical backgrounds, or isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some studies which suggest that cycling has remained the preserve of white men from kind of higher, upper economic kind of stratas of society, and absolutely the incidence of, black people or other ethnic minorities riding bikes in London is lower than you would expect if you compared it to the general population of London. That is changing, particularly around certain specific routes. The population in terms of minorities is not equally spread across the geographical layout of the city. So, for example, in southeast London, there are larger minority areas there, and where a cycle route has been introduced there, Cycle Superhighway 7, it has helped that community, but certainly it's a challenge. But I think this is actually a universal challenge. If you look to the Netherlands, certainly the incidence of recent immigrants in the population in the Netherlands cycling is also very low. And I think it demonstrates that, it's not just about infrastructure. You really have to take care to encourage people to ride.
Okay. I'm going to ask Adam Stones to join our conversation. There's a webcam here, so if you walk into the spot where I am, Adam, you should be able to see Mark. Mark, can you see Adam?
I
Hello.
can. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Mark.
All
How's
right.
it going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Usually you have these conversations just when you're in your living room and you're in your living room, right?
Yeah, we often do that.
Um, and I asked Adam Stones because you also have some. Well, there we go already. Love London, go Dutch. That's been a massive campaign that stopped a year ago or something. You both know a lot more about it than I do, so maybe one of you could explain what this campaign is actually about.
Yeah, maybe I can kick off, Mark, and you can jump in. But this was a campaign by
Absolutely.
the London Cycling Campaign. So, as Mark said, the election of Boris Johnson in 2008 was a big thing. 4 years later, 2012, there was another campaign. And this was the campaign by London Cycling Campaign then, to get all the mayoral candidates to sign up to certain really key conditions that we wanted from cycling in the city. And rather than some sort of ethereal wish list, we planted the idea in the ground of this like dream nirvana land called the Netherlands and said, wouldn't it be lovely if you really love London, we could have something like the Dutch have? And so we created this list of this wish list and said, well, if you love London, it doesn't need to be about cycling. If you want to create a livable city, then let's go Dutch. Let's create a certain number of changes. Let's have the infrastructure. Let's create these systems called mini Hollands in neighborhoods. And it was really successful. Boris Johnson got in again. The campaign led to him creating the Vision for Cycling, which led to lots more infrastructure changes, more cycle superhighways. As Mark said, they put some blue paint on the road, and hey, it's a superhighway, so enjoy it. But apart from that, it did get better and better, and it led on to big changes to the point now in 2016. It led to another campaign called Sign for Cycling, again by London Cycling Campaign, which kind of took the idea a bit further. And by now, we didn't have this ethereal wish list. The cycling community was a bit more informed, a bit more motivated, and it wasn't just about let's go Dutch. These are our demands. This is really what we want. And it's led to even more changes. The current mayor who came in 2016, Sadiq Khan, has brought in the first full-time cycling and walking commissioner. The budget's gone up from a sort of a paltry about £1.50 per person up to, onto the par with Dutch standards. And he's made a commitment to create these things called mini Hollands, which are these livable sort of Dutch-style infrastructure like we saw in Meredith's presentation within every borough. Although I have to say, I don't know whether it's anything to do with post-Brexit, but these mini Hollands are now called livable neighbourhoods. Any reference to Europe has been taken out, but still the idea is there, and it's really leading on to big changes. So, but as Mark said, how this kind of started was trying to get more and more cyclists going, so that there was a sort of tipping point. So there was enough of a community there to really say, now we really need the changes, and that's why the campaigns have kind of matured as well.
Mark, could you?
Yeah.
How
Yeah, I mean,
are
I'll
if
just jump in there because
mhm.
Adam and I, we're both so familiar with this stuff, and it's really interesting to kind of review it and critique it and see how things evolved over time. And really, it was, politics is everything in London. It controls what your street looks like, and so it is a very political environment. And it was just this kind of confluence. It was everything happening at the right time with the right people connected. There was Love London, Go Dutch. As Adam said, they kind of put out these vision documents, and they were electrifying because it allowed people to really imagine what things might be like if we did these things. And there were other protests. There were stop killing cyclist protests, and there was the support of a national newspaper, the Times. And I remember sitting in a meeting in Festival Hall with people from the London Cycling Campaign, with some bloggers, with some activists, and we sort of said, well, what are we going to do? We're starting from scratch here. And we looked to the internet where the rise of policy blogs was really having an impact. And we were able to look to the internet, and Mark Wagenberger, the author of the Bicycle Dutch blog, had created a video called How the Dutch Got Their Cycle Paths. And it detailed the history of the Stop de Kindermoord movement in the Netherlands, the Stop the Child Murder movement. And we basically said, okay, well, there's our strategy. We'll just do what the Dutch did.
Oh,
And we copied them directly. Absolutely. We took notes and we said, okay, they had an impact. Hopefully we can have an impact. And that's where this movement came from. And that's how we, people like Adam were able to come up with slogans like Love London, Go Dutch. And it was such an interesting time.
and it also turns out that we actually have the person who initiated back then the Stop the Kindermoord campaign here, right? Is that true? Oh, you made that video. Oh, I thought that you stopped child killing. Um, Now, for one question I have is one of the striking things about the discussion is London is that it seems that you have to fight people who are not blaming themselves for being in cars and not paying enough attention to cyclists, but that the person on the bike is actually being blamed for his uncareful behavior. Is that still true? Is that still because when I see that you're addressing the city government, you're addressing your own community, but you're not saying, "Hey, people in your cars, stop paying attention," as if it's still well, maybe you did, but it looks as if that's still there's still a tension or that it's still a path that you're afraid that some people are afraid to walk to really start blaming these people in cars for not having some kind of subconscious intuition for that there are bikers on the streets. Is that still true?
I think there's still this, there's a certain amount of friction, animosity, certainly in any sort of community where you have cyclists and cars. But everybody whose cycles tends to also have a car. This, people understand that. With the campaigns, the communications campaigns that we've used over the last sort of 10 years to get more people cycling, a lot of it has been this kind of getting the groundswell, getting a lot more people cycling. And I suppose it's been targeted at three main groups, looking at the policymakers, looking at the influencers like the big employers, and then the consumers themselves, often targeting car drivers and rather than sort of attacking them, saying, look, you can have this lifestyle where you can cycle as well. And with any communications campaign, you're sort of taking people from this state of being blissfully unaware of something to something where they become so aware they become an advocate and they kind of fight for you. Each stage along that, you have these kind of barriers which will stop them moving, and also motivators which will get them going. And the motivators can often be really personal things to really encourage them. It could be something to do with family or health or any of these things. And we ran this annual campaign to, and in fact, a lot of the communications campaigns in London were targeted at commuters. It's a big swelling, it's a big part of the community in London, and so a lot of the campaigns were getting more people to cycle through looking at commuters. And so we ran this campaign every year called Bike to Work Day, and every year we'd have to come up with some new catchy PR angle that would get people to cycle. And we'd do these studies, and we get scientists to back them up, and we'd say, oh, well, actually, you're more likely to get a promotion if you cycle, and you're more likely to live longer, all these things which were factually correct. One year we came up with this headline that you're more likely to be better at sex if you cycle, which actually was scientifically proven. So anyway, that's just what I'm saying. But the idea was to really move people along the path, and really through positive encouragement and showing them what could happen. But I think definitely now we still have this real kind of growing, swelling community of cycling in London, where, as Mark said as well, that and you touched on, that there's this feeling that there's this kind of almost still like an adventure sport where people are fighting for the road still, fighting against cars, and that you're wearing lycra, you're head to toe in day glow materials, you're blinding everyone else with your lights. And it's, if you want to encourage more people to cycle, they need to see themselves in that. And so we're trying to sort of nuance it and speak to the other cyclists and say, come on, actually, if you want to be a responsible cyclist, it's not about sort of this war game. Actually, it's about just living your life every day, and it's not about a sport from getting to work on your carbon fiber race bike and your helmet to go 2 miles and track it on Strava. This is about living your life every day like they do in the Netherlands.
So it should be less macho-like and more for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll just go back to that point about, the drivers and is there this conflict between drivers and cyclists? What's really interesting in London is that actually there is already a very high level of awareness that, if you are driving in central London on a personal journey, it's either because you absolutely have to or because you are very, very stupid. Because, we have already the congestion charge. It costs a lot of money to drive in central London every day. So the cars that remain are pretty much not actually, your average commuter driving in from the suburbs. Actually, most of the vehicles in central London are professional vehicles. So mini cab drivers, Uber drivers, delivery drivers, and of course, the famous London taxi driver. You've all seen, the black London cab that we have. It's an icon of London. And, London taxi drivers will tell you that they are the gentlemen, the knights of the road. And most cyclists in London will tell you that they have a different opinion. And it goes back to politics because the taxi lobby, the leader of the taxi lobby, people who have a commercial interest in keeping as much road space as possible to themselves in London, described cyclists as the ISIS of London. So there is absolutely a friction between different communities. I've never been called a terrorist before. I put it on my CV. But yeah, there is this friction between different communities, but it's a political friction rather than a social friction. This is a lobby when it came to building the cycle superhighway through London, there was resistance from one of the largest and most powerful companies in the city. And we realized that we couldn't fight them with cyclists and activists because, it's too easy to disparage the activist. We had to fight like with like. So we recruited about 160 leading company CEOs to basically to come out and pledge their public support for building the cycle superhighways. And we had so many companies: Microsoft, Unilever, Coca-Cola, the Financial Times. And this, I think, is a really important lesson from London, which is that you have to ensure the conversation is not just about cyclists, but that in order to make a cycling city, wherever you are in fact increasing efficiency, making it greener, making it safer, and making it a more attractive place in which to undertake business. And that was a really big turning point for us in London. We went from having headline news saying that businesses hated the bikeways to headline news saying that 160 leading businesses absolutely loved the bikeways, and it's time to get on and build them. And that, along with a poll which showed that the majority of Londoners supported moves to encourage cycling, that was headline news. So, if I have one lesson from London that I can share, it would really be that everyone who wants to make a more sustainable city, whether they're activists or whether they're engineers, everyone must have a strong understanding of this, basically, how the media production process works. Because capturing that public conversation and using it to demonstrate support for pretty radical plans, that was the only way the politicians were given the courage to get things built. And yeah, it's an important takeaway from London.
Thank you so much for now, Mark. Adam is going to stay with us all night. We need to move to Copenhagen, but before that, maybe there's one or two questions for Mark that you really feel you'd like to ask right now. Yes, there's one from the audience, Mark.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, I noticed we just talked about the difference in ethnics maybe of cyclists in London, but I noticed also that the difference in types of bike people in Amsterdam ride and types of bike people in London ride. Is there a specific reason why, or could you maybe point to a reason why you have fancy carbon race bikes in London and maybe shabby city bikes in Amsterdam? I mean, I have both and I live in Amsterdam, but I only use my city bike for city commuting.
Good question. Maybe it's because the Queen doesn't live here, but maybe you have another answer to that.
So the Queen during the Second World War did ride a bicycle, and it was a proper upright bicycle. We used to have this national industry of bike building. It was based in the city of Coventry, and there we were building what I would call, what you recognise as city bikes, what we would call Dutch bikes, but in fact they were English city bikes, and that domestic industry really slipped away through the 70s and 80s, starting in the 60s, with the rise of automation. So there was a kind of lost generation there of people who really knew how to ride as a day-to-day activity. They probably knew how to ride at the weekend, maybe on a sports ride or on a leisure ride, but they didn't have that day-to-day riding that you guys have. So as a consequence, the tool that they had for doing that job was a bicycle best suited for doing a leisure ride. So maybe a road bike, a carbon fiber road bike, or maybe a hybrid bike imported from Taiwan for riding through the park at the weekend. It wasn't the utility tool of city bikes. Again, that is changing, and Adam could talk for hours about indicator species and the people who really lead the way from a sort of social perspective. And in certain fashionable corners of London, especially around Hackney and Broadway Market, this kind of bicycle is much, much more prevalent, this upright Dutch bike. And so at first it had to be cool, and then people realized that actually it really is cool because it's a great job that allows you to do everything day to day. So it is changing. And the introduction of bike share, I think, has also helped to remind people what city bikes can do for you and how much easier they are to use. So people had to get used to being able to use these kind of upright bicycles again. But it is coming back.
Mark, I'm going to stop you for a second because yeah, it was quite an extensive answer, but I still notice that Adam wants to have the final say on this. Yes. So yeah. There you go, Adam.
Just to build on what Mark was saying, I was just thinking actually while you were talking that the kind of the growth of urban cycling also coincided with the growth of kind of sports cycling in the UK. And, the Dutch cycling sports culture really has a long tradition and lots to be proud of, but us Brits don't have too much to shout about. So when we get people like Mark Cavendish and Bradley Wiggins doing well on the track and at the Olympics and Tour de France, then about sort of 10 years ago, we had the rise of this new population, this new sort of vertebrate species in the UK that we called mammals, which is spelled M-A-M-I-L-S, which are middle-aged men in lycra. And they really kind of, the population of this exploded, and this became a very competitive activity where these mammals would buy these new latest carbon fiber bikes. And actually cycling became the new boardroom. Golf kind of died out, and cycling took over that kind of role. And actually that kind of grew as urban cycling grew. So a lot of people would compete to get the latest bikes. And so actually, you have a lot of people racing in on their bikes, a couple of miles into town, which is kind of extraordinary because they're kind of bashing over potholes in London. The roads are terrible, but it is strange. I wrote an article for Huffington Post called "The Five Tribes of Urban Cycling in London," of cycle commuters in London. One of them was the lycra lover, who has this kind of carbon fibre beast, and then there's the everyday adventurer, who has this sort of whiz-bang whistles and everything. And it goes through to kind of all sorts of things, where you have the person who's the person that Mark described in Hackney, which has this kind of granny bike, and they don't have a helmet because they're just kind of protected by the fumes of artisan coffee. But you have all these different tribes in London, and it's quite extraordinary. But the kind of the idea of carbon fibre bikes to race 2 miles to work is quite extraordinary.
Okay.
Yeah. And the
mammals, they're
mammals,
called, right?
there's an interesting
you are
takeaway
one, or
from the mammals,
no.
just quickly. From the mammals, there's an interesting takeaway. They're often disparaged, these middle-aged men in lycra. You know, they go too fast, they wear appalling clothing. But, you know, these were the top echelons of city boardrooms riding bikes. And we were able to lean on them when we needed the support. So we were infiltrating boardrooms in the square mile, in the city of London, and saying, come on, you guys, with your, you know, £15,000 bikes. We know that you ride. You are the guys we need to say publicly that we should be making better conditions for bikes. And invariably, because of that kind of terrifying old boys network that exists,
Mark, this is going to be your
and
final
his guys,
sentence, I'm afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they went to school with the mayor. They went to the same club as the mayor. So they were able to have conversations that were really impactful. So, yeah, hooray for mammals. I never thought I'd say it, but there you go.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark Yates. Ames.
Thank you.
Is Clotilde already there? Oh, that's her. Wow. That's nice about modern life, right? We can immediately move to Brussels to talk about Copenhagen, but you managed to talk about London with someone from Sydney, so why not talk about Copenhagen with somebody who is actually in Brussels? Clotilde?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, good evening. You can hear me, you can see me and hear me as well, right?
Yes, I can see you and I can hear you.
Yes, and we can hear you perfectly, and we can see you perfectly as well.
Okay, perfect.
We're going to talk about Copenhagen, but since you're in Brussels, and that's even closer by, if we go to Brussels, should we bring our bicycle?
In Brussels, yes, of course you can, but it's way more interesting to talk about Copenhagen.
Okay, so there's nothing to say about Brussels. Well, then let's move to Copenhagen immediately. It's now the #1 bicycle city in the world. Did it really earn that prize, or is it just because you can't give Amsterdam that prize until 2100 every year?
No, the point is, and I really think Copenhagen 2 years ago when we did this, when we published this index, I think Copenhagen deserved to be the #1. And it was Amsterdam before, and we will see this year we will publish a new index. So we will see if it's Copenhagen or Amsterdam. Actually, it's two very bicycle friendly city. But I think that 2 years ago, Copenhagen did really a lot to make sure they deserve this prize, I would say. But it's also because they invest a lot in cycling infrastructure, and they do a lot to accommodate cyclists in Copenhagen.
So they invested a lot to become this friendly city. What is cycling in Copenhagen like?
It is very easy and safe to cycle in Copenhagen, and I arrived there 5 years ago. And I'm French, I'm not Danish, so I can talk about that like without this. Also with ideas to be too positive about this city, but I can really say that it's obvious when you arrive in Copenhagen that you will get around by bike in this city because you have a very comprehensive network of bicycle infrastructure, and it's easy, it's fast, it's convenient, and as you can see on the picture you just put on the screen, these past years the city of Copenhagen built many bridges. And these bridges, they are the symbol of this very successful cycling policy because they decided to create some shortcuts for cyclists and not for cars. all these bridges, they opened 13 bridges the past decade. So it's really a lot. The connectivity in Copenhagen is really better thanks to that. And it's only for pedestrians and for cyclists, no more for cars anymore.
Now, can we move back to that previous
Yes,
picture? Because
yes, of
on the
course.
one hand, this really looks like utopia to us. On the
Yeah,
other hand, from an Amsterdam perspective, you would say, well, maybe not so safe, maybe a great area for people who want to sell drugs.
really?
We
Okay,
used to
well,
have
why?
that in a region called southeast of Bijlmer, and we did away with them. And but you are well, so maybe we're warning you, or maybe you found a way to also guarantee social safety here.
Social safety, no, I think it's a joke. It's very safe. You can see here on this picture the bridge that we call the snake, and it's a very nice design. It's a very nice curve, and actually when you are cycling on this bridge, it's like a urban experience, like you are flying above the water. And it's not at all, because we were talking about London, it's not at all an elevated cycle track. It's really a bridge, because we don't like this idea of this elevated cycle track. When you put away from the ground the cyclists, they are no more connected to the shops, to the ground, to the urban spaces, to the urban life. And I wanted to say that because some articles have been written about the fact that it's an elevated cycle track like they would like to do in London. I'm thinking about this Foster's project, and it's not. It's really bridges to improve the connectivity of the city.
Okay, and they're also safe at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Danish, they're nice people. Um, let's move to the next slide. You were
Yes,
already
sure.
telling us that these kind of innovations really help to change how the Copenhagen commuting style, or is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, no, what I wanted to say is that the past year, 2016, has been really a great year for cycling in Copenhagen. And for the very first time since the city of Copenhagen started counting traffic entering in the city, so they have some counter all around the city center.
Mm-hmm.
And for the very first time, there are more bicycles than cars recorded. So it's a very nice symbol of also this successful policy. Now we have more bicycles than cars.
Okay. Congratulations. That really sounds like a great achievement. Now, who is the typical cyclist in Copenhagen?
Oh, in Copenhagen, I would say that the typical cyclist is everybody, absolutely everybody. We can't say that there is one type of cyclist or there is a part of the inhabitants that they never cycle. Actually, if you take the citizens of Copenhagen and the one that work or study in the city, 63% of them commute by bike every day.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking about everybody, it's really everybody, and it's because of this very safe and comprehensive bicycle network that you can see on this picture. You have all kind of people. The cyclists of Copenhagen are the citizens of Copenhagen.
Um, because previously, and you were telling us a story which is really impressive, but previously we got the idea that the typical cyclist is probably not how would you call that, of an immigrant family, that he's typical, at least that was true in London. It's true to a lot, to some extent in Amsterdam. How is Copenhagen a globalized city, and if so, is that reflected in this picture?
Maybe it's less global than Amsterdam, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that in Copenhagen you have some NGO helping immigrants people riding a bicycle, because it's true that when you come from the Middle East, for instance, and you arrive in Copenhagen, sometime in your mind it's not obvious for you to cycle. It has been prohibited before in your life, and I know that in Copenhagen some NGO help, especially women
Mm-hmm.
riding a bike, because otherwise they are a little bit out of the society. if they don't have this opportunity to get around for a very cheap this cheap means of transportation.
Okay, so you have people dealing with that. Yeah, I see a lot of people nodding, like they recognize those projects from here. Now, what are everything is going really smoothly, right? But still, there must be some challenges, or are they all fixed?
Okay, actually, the challenges in Copenhagen, it's the one that most of the cities would like to have. It's the fact that during the rush hour, and you have sometimes too many cyclists on the cycle tracks, because you had these past years a really important increase of the number of cyclists. But the city of Copenhagen have found a solution. They widen the cycle tracks, and now it's quite common to cycle on 3.5-meter wide cycle tracks. So it's way more than in most of the cities in Europe. And I'm not talking about bi-directional cycle tracks. It's only one way. And I don't know if you know, and it's not a picture I have here, but we have a bridge, the Dronning Louise's Bro, which is very famous in Copenhagen. And here you have a very wide cycle track, which is divided into two lanes. You have one lane that we call it the conversation lane, and the other one is the fast lane. And the conversation lane, it's made for people who want to cycle at their own pace, and they want maybe to chat with their friends or with their colleagues when they are leaving the office. And the fast lane is made for cyclists cycling maybe 10 or 15 kilometers to go back home, and they want to overtake these two cyclists chatting, or they want to overtake a cargo bike, a mother with children, a cargo bike, not riding really fast. And because you have this very wide cycle track, you can accommodate all different kinds of cyclists.
Did I notice that somebody wanted to comment on that? Whoa. Oh, we have fast cycle tracks too, I just heard. But anyway, I haven't seen many of those. I recognize the system from the car system, of course. Do they also have a tourist lane, right? So somebody who cannot ride a bicycle at all, and then next to that, the conversation lane. That would be what we have to add.
Nice.
Um, So what you're telling us is that what may work better for Copenhagen is that they started later, so they can be more innovative than a city like Amsterdam, maybe that's already got that cycle culture, but may find it harder to actually still innovate with these bridges you showed us, or even those lanes. Although somewhere we seem to have them, they're not common here. That's what I can tell you.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to put it this way, but what I want to say about Copenhagen and maybe compare with Amsterdam, they really try to be modern and to think about how to go further, how to get more cyclists, how to spoil the cyclists. And when you look at at the picture with the footrest, it's really something I love in Copenhagen, because it's really based on the behavior of the cyclists. And it just means that the city of Copenhagen, they understand what the behavior of the cyclist, and it's very important when you design the infrastructure and services to make sure you understand cyclists. They are not pedestrians, they are not car drivers, they are their own behavior, and you have to observe and to understand that. And the footrest, it's something that is based on the natural behavior of cyclists. They don't like to stop at the red light. It's the same in Copenhagen and in Amsterdam, probably. And you don't like that when you cycle. And actually, what you like finally when you wait at the red light, it just not to have to get off your bicycle. And so you use this footrest, and
so that's what we're looking at now. Somebody who does not want to get off his bicycle, and they invented something for him, right?
Yeah, no, it's just designed for this guy.
Let's see. Do we have this in Amsterdam as well, or no? This really is a meaningful innovation for us here.
Definitely, and it's only one example of innovation in Copenhagen. You can create way more urban furniture like that if you want to, and if you want to be innovative as well in Amsterdam.
Okay. Nice picture. We keep it up for a while. Anyone here who's got a question or a statement for Clotilde?
Yeah, thanks. Hi. I'm wondering what's the actual trigger for Copenhagen to start investing on this city cycle program?
Did you hear that, Clotilde?
Not very well. Can you repeat it,
What
please?
was the incentive to invest so much in this
Yes, of
cycle
course.
program?
Yes, actually, I can say that Danes are very practical in a way, and they know that when they build 1 kilometer of cycle track, it's the infrastructure is paid off in 5 years. If you look at all the health benefits you will get, because you will get more cyclists having exercise every day.
Okay, so they just did the math, and
Yeah.
they allowed themselves to be convinced. Anyone else who's got? I've got like 2 final questions here from the audience before we need to say goodbye. But this is one question.
Is there any problem with motorcycles as well? In Amsterdam, there's a lot of struggle between cyclists and motorcycles.
Yeah, scooters that like Vespas and those kind.
Okay. So motorcycles are allowed in Copenhagen on the cycle tracks as well, but we have really not a lot of motorcycles. Really not. It's not the same problem as in Amsterdam. We really don't have a lot of motorcycles.
Okay.
But they should be banned. Anyway, it's my point of view.
Even though you don't have many, yeah. Okay, anyone who says, well, there is room for one final question or a statement, and it's going to be me? Yes, over there.
What's your advice for Amsterdam apart from the bridges?
You heard the question, but you're thinking, right? Or
Can you just repeat it, please?
what is your advice for the city of Amsterdam from your Copenhagen perspective while being in Brussels?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're being in Brussels. Yes, of course. Don't do like in Brussels, but you are way further anyway, already in Amsterdam. I would advise you to, I mean, my experience of Amsterdam, I really go there and go cycling there, but sometimes I feel a little bit of pressure at some intersections that are a little bit complicated sometimes for cyclists. And it's something I don't really know that in Copenhagen, but yes, you have during the rush hour in Amsterdam probably, and yeah, in the morning at some intersection, it's quite intense, I would say. And you have to fix that to make sure people don't feel this stress. You don't have to be stressed when you're on a bicycle. It's not possible.
Okay, so that's a behavioral suggestion.
Yes.
Don't be stressed, as well as do something about those rush hour congestions, right? And then look at Copenhagen. Okay. Well, for now, thank you so much, Clotilde Imbert.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
In the end, I started to. At first, I thought, well, we had that, or we don't want it, right? But at some point, when I saw that picture of this guy leaning to this, what's the English word for that? Railing. Thank you so much. I thought, yeah, they are innovative. That is Danish design, isn't it? Anyway, we have a bicycle mayor here. She's here. She's got a couple of more months. To enlighten us, Anna Lutten, I would like you to invite you here on stage. You can either stand, or I also have a seat and a cup of water for you. And she's being joined by Maud de Vries. Maud, where are you? Yeah. And she's a co-founder and stichter of Cycle Space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot bigger than well, you already knew, right? But it turned out that you do so many things at Cycle Space. It's really impressive. But so maybe before we move to this important institution of having a bicycle mayor, Start with you, Mout Vries. For the people who don't know, what is cycle space, and more specifically, what is a cycle hack that you organize?
Oh yeah, that's maybe the beginning of Cycle Space. And some of you know who are in the audience, like Miriam. In 2015, we organized Cycle Hack Amsterdam, which is a global festival for a couple of days. And we asked people, hey, can we work on innovations in Amsterdam? We're talking about that. And then Cycle Space came from that, actually, from that idea. And we did a cycle hack last year as well. I don't know if we're going to do a next one, but there's going to be a next one, definitely. And then Cycle Space came from that. We were here with Pakhuis de Zwijger during the European presidency in 2016. And this year, together with Anna, and of course, we're going to organize the first Bicycle Mayor Summit. And it's going to be here in the Netherlands. During Velocity, which is the biggest cycling congress in the world. And also Velocity is organizing a breakout to Amsterdam because it's going to be organized in Nijmegen. So we're going to be hosting that as well. And I want to invite you all to help us there.
Are you spreading the word of Amsterdam becoming an innovative world leader towards cycling again? Or can we also notice in Amsterdam what your influence of your organization?
Yeah, I think it goes two ways. I think a lot of people in the whole wide world are looking to Amsterdam to give them an answer to that leadership that we have. And Cycle Space will help in that. We have a very big, audacious goal for 2030 where we want to be, where we want to have 50% of all rides in every city in the world by bicycle in order to stop the climate change. So that's big. And we're going to be working on that.
Okay. Now, Anna Lute, you are the first, I think, Amsterdam bicycle mayor.
Yes,
Yeah.
the first. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I'm really happy to be here. I'm the first bicycle mayor of Amsterdam and actually also of the world. And
But still, there's a summit going to be organized for mayors, but that's only going to be you.
yeah, well, no, not only me. Actually, there is one other mayor now in Sydney. She wasn't there now to speak to us, but she will, or she's actually just started. She's going to start next month, and she will join us during the summit. But the summit is more based around the program and the ID to actually share the knowledge about the program and to get other cities or actually figuring out how the program could work in their city.
There's some problem with the microphone, but no,
Is it yours?
it's not us, right? Well, maybe we should just keep our distance. Although this program is being streamed, so you still need to talk a bit towards the microphone. Now, what does the daily life of a bicycle mayor looks like, except for riding your bicycle, I suppose?
Well, actually, it's sort of it's actually the same daily life of everyone has. But I have the luck to talk about cycling every day I want to, and to meet a lot of different new people, to get new insights. But also to get insights from people abroad and have a new perspective to my daily life here in Amsterdam, and that I actually have the luck to be here and ride on my bicycle every day, and that we have this infrastructure going on. And instead of people here, if you ask me the question about who will be the typical Amsterdammer to ride a bicycle, I would probably say it is the person who isn't actually aware that he can ride a bicycle and he's riding it every day. But when the bicycle gets stolen, he feels lost in the city because it's his way to get around in the city.
Okay, that's interesting. So the typical person from Amsterdam who is cycling will not refer to himself as a cyclist, probably.
Well, it's so normal here, and most of us grew up with it, and that's why we're not aware that we are actually riding those red carpets every day, especially designed for us to cycle on. And that's something like it was actually the summer school of Meredith is actually leading. It's where I heard those and Marco as well. Didn't get to where I heard those insights from people abroad about our infrastructure.
Okay, so let's say the good thing for a major is that you are, let's say, um, the city mother of about 400,000 people, right? But the other question is, what do we need a mayor for if everybody is cycling anyway? So where do you come in? What's the difference that you managed to make during this last year?
Well, actually, not yet everyone is cycling. That would be perfect, but it's not yet happening. 68% is, and that's actually excluding the Ritz that's going by train. Like people are going to the station by bicycle, and well, it doesn't matter. But like in some parts in Amsterdam, people aren't riding yet. So we need to figure out, or actually, I'm trying to figure out, do research, like why are the people there cycling yet? Is it because of the infrastructure? Well, most of the times it isn't. But is it maybe about the culture? It could be. So what can we actually do to get them on the bike and to ensure a safe ride as well? And also, because it's so normal here, people forget actually to think about the bike. So different companies, commercial companies as well, could think of what can we do actually for people that they go on the bike even more.
Or start biking at all in those neighborhoods like the one near Bosjesweg,
or get people that are working for them actually going on the bike to their work. So maybe not treating them or actually trying to get a good parking place for them, but maybe a good parking place for the bike. So we have like, and also
so that's what you're focusing on, maybe together. So getting also people from those other neighborhoods outside of the center,
especially
to
kids,
cycle, especially
like the
kids.
Dutch kids are really the most happy kids in the world. There is some research done on that because of the freedom that cycling gives them, and it's too bad that in particularly let's say north and southeast and the new west of Amsterdam, a lot of kids are not cycling, so that needs to be done. Something.
Okay, so if you're not so you would say, as long as you cycle, you belong to this group of the happiest people in the world. Not cycling, not so happy.
You say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now there's a task for you, Mayor. So, while focusing on these neighborhoods and these kids here in the city, what have you achieved during these last months? Awareness, or maybe even more specific outcomes?
Yeah, awareness. But next to that, I've actually, next to organizing it or helping Cyclespace to organize it as a global program, for Amsterdam, I've organized two hackathons. I started with the summer drinks actually. Everyone could join, and from there on, I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people. Actually listened. That was the most important thing. To people, and always when I was there, actually trying to get the conversations starting about cycling, so that they were aware to think of the bicycle as well. And next to that, I've organized. So I made of all those research, I made up these 3 points we're just discussing about, and around those 3 points, I've organized 2 hackathons. And people, some are here as well, they joined hackathons, and out of the hackathons, and hackathon is actually an event, a workshop to create new ideas and actually to create projects around cycling. So
in order to get the experience out of the street that we were talking about.
Yeah, so that's what I've did, and now we have actually 5 concrete ideas. And what I'm doing right now is trying to get those or some of those ideas.
Okay, can you mention one or two of them that are really on the edge of being funded?
Well, one actually, I'm working or I'm planning now a workshop with a big building company, and that's about like flexible roads. So an experiment about how can we make sure that people, like, I think the cars are always the guests in the street, but that at a street that cars cyclists, pedestrians, all can work together during the day. So the road will be need to be sort of flexible. So if there are more cyclists during the day, then the road will brighten up for cyclists. But if there are more cars, then it will brighten up for cars. So it's
So
something.
that goes even further than what they do in Copenhagen,
Yeah.
because you can adjust the road during daytime.
Yeah, that will be like this is an
Shouting back.
experiment that will be really good to try out if it works. And next to that, there's one for kids on school. Actually, in Den Haag, there's already a program, a sort of a biking to school program, and we want to implement this program here in a part of Amsterdam where not a lot of kids are cycling yet. And it's about sort of getting the kids going to school. They can earn points when they're on their bicycle. They're also helping a charity by doing this. And for this, we also need to look like, why aren't they cycling that? Is it maybe because they don't have the money to buy the bikes? So then we should implement a sharing bike system, for example. So this is another project.
Okay, so one is focusing on this rush hour congestion, and the other one's on getting children to ride their bicycles.
Yeah,
to school. Yeah.
To school. Yeah. Now maybe the reason why my girlfriend doesn't want to cycle in those new west like neighborhoods, because she says, well, maybe the infrastructure is in place, but these roads are tremendously boring, right?
Yeah.
Now I heard of some car experiments that actually for highways you can actually make driving a long road somewhat more of an experience by projections or billboards or art or whatever. Is that also something you need to work on?
Well, this is actually one idea I have in mind as well. It's the sort of the gamification route, and I think some other cities are actually other cities in the world are also already doing things with architecture and getting the environment, building it around cycling. And if we can, because I saw the picture of in Meredith's presentation, like where the street was really wide for cyclists, and it's actually a perfect infrastructure. But for me, it really looks boring actually as well to ride on it. And if we can find some kind of solution to make that roads attractive as well, working maybe with a tracking system, like everyone has a phone, you can't use it on your while you're riding. No, you can't use it, but you can get
one of us here can, yeah.
No, you're not allowed anymore. I'm really happy with that. But you can work with like sort of a signal with it, and then like in maybe the bus stops that there are posters posted on it, or some kind of things, but that will make your road more attractive, or you get after your trip, you get some kind of facts, a message to you, send it to your phone. I don't know.
Or and if you take it once, maybe we should also invite Meredith. But she started with a Jane Jacobs citation, who is probably the famous bottom-up urban planner that the Western Hemisphere has known, and she would probably say, make these streets themselves more lively. Nothing happens on those streets. Where are the shops, or where's the market? Just right out there on the sidewalk.
Yeah, there is this program in Pakhuis de Zwijger that's called the Bewegende Stad, the moving city, and that's really close to what we're talking about here.
Okay, so that's also something that's coming. All right, before we ask Meredith and Adam to join us once again, you're looking for volunteers, right?
We're looking for volunteers for the 14th of June, where we are organizing the breakout to Amsterdam for fellow cities. I'm going to tell you it's going to be exciting, because I think we're going to have 1,200 people from all over the globe going on a bike trip, and then ending up having a big party at the Westergasfabriek. So I'm inviting you all to send us an email and see if you can be there. It would be great.
What will those volunteers actually do? Just party, or?
No, they can party as well, of course. But in the beginning, of course, we need to show how Amsterdam became Amsterdam. And it's not only about like the successes, but also about the problems. So we're talking about all the challenges that we face here. So we need a lot of people to help us do that. Because yes, on a bike.
Okay, so there'll be city guides.
Yeah, tour guides or
Tour
whatever,
guides
yeah,
throughout the city. Yeah.
Yeah.
I once used to ride. I used to be a yellow bike guide.
Good.
Yeah, it's
So
great
you're gonna
exercise.
be there.
I could be there.
Send me
although,
an email.
Yeah. Well, there's some streets where people start yelling at you all the time, so I'm not going to show those. But except for that, it's great work, especially during summer. Yeah, and that's what you're looking for: city guides who can tell their stories,
Exactly.
then historical stories about Amsterdam and how it became a bicycle city, right?
Exactly.
And they can send an email to
Floortje, who's actually over
Floortje,
there.
right?
To Floortje
Well,
at
then everybody, and that's
cyclespace.org.
just Floortje at Floortje, or
Floortje at cyclespace.
Floortje at
.org.
Okay.
But you can also meet her in the cafe later,
Okay.
maybe.
So
Or
everybody
me.
who could be interested now is aware that they could send an email to Floortje at cyclespace.org if they want to be a volunteer at this great bicycle event. It means being a tour guide or a city guide on June 14th, right?
Exactly.
And party afterwards
Yes.
until 4 a.m.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
Wow. Meredith and Adam, could I invite you to join us for let's say the wrap up? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. 14th of June. Yes.
Yeah. So the Bicycle Mayor Summit is going to be organized 10th and 11th of June in the new Cyclespace Pavilion in Zuidas on the Gustav Mahlerplein. And on the 14th of June, there's going to be this breakout from all the people that come from Nijmegen into Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's even clearer.
Yes.
Or more clear, I should probably say. Meredith, you started off. We started off in Amsterdam. Now we heard about. We got some lessons from London and Copenhagen. What did we learn? You as a scientist, what would you say? Is there any?
I'm only 2 months in.
Yes. Well, you can also refuse to answer
More
this
of a
question,
groupie at this point.
but we heard that we should be aware that if we want a job in London, we should start riding a bicycle, right? That's something we learned. We learned about innovation, but maybe something that we did not see and that you noticed while looking at the cities of London and Copenhagen.
How much time do we have?
We have until 1 a.m. So.
I will try to keep it brief. I think I heard a lot of stories, and so great to hear from Clotilde, a colleague, former colleague from Copenhagen Eyes, and from Mark Ames, a former student from planning the cycling city, and so many of those stories intertwined, the unique characteristics of each city, and we were talking earlier, at dinner, about when I go to Copenhagen, I immediately fall into the cycle space of Copenhagen. It's I get reminded of making my left turn signal and queuing in the line.
Could you repeat? So it's not this, but it's
no, it's this.
It's this.
So when you
okay.
want to turn left,
okay.
and then you swerve
That's
around,
safer
and then
than
you
doing
wait,
this, right? Because
and then you keep going. So and it's very easy to fall into this behavior in each cycle in Copenhagen, and when you go to London, you fall into a different behavior. So I hope that we don't all become the same type of cycling city. That's certainly not the goal, and the goal.
No, but every now and then, let's put it a step further. Every now and then, the typical non-aware of being a cyclist, is bike driving person from Amsterdam, is being blamed for making the lives of the elderly or the pedestrians or the mothers with or fathers with children almost impossible. Now we heard that you live near the Albert Kuip market. That's very hard to reach on your regular Saturday morning if you're in a wheelchair or something. So are there some more morals to be learned here in this city maybe? Do we need
in Amsterdam?
Yeah, do we need an ethical rise up to make the cyclists more aware that there are also other people on the roads?
No,
No.
I think there's
No, absolutely not. No.
I think there's something so wonderful about living here and as an American, and and talking to Dutch people who, not Dutch people here because they are more aware, but your average colleague and talk about cycling and they kind of just go, huh? What do you work on? What do you work on? What is? Tell me more about this, because this is just something, again, so natural. It's an extension of a limb. It's and I think that's really wonderful characteristic of this city. So I hope that stays.
I'd like you.
actually.
I'd like you just the way you are, right?
Yeah.
Adam, same question for you, but now you live in Amsterdam, actually, of course, but you know a lot about London, obviously.
Loads. What do you want to know?
I want to know. We just heard. Well, stay the way you are, but keep inventing. But maybe there's something else you told us about these campaigns. We saw a bit of the Copenhagen examples. Maybe a lesson that's to be drawn here.
Well, I mean, I moved to Amsterdam about 6 months ago. I lived in London for 10 years, and a lot of the work I did in communications was around kind of trying to affect more positive social behaviours. And I was always attracted to Amsterdam, and one of the reasons I wanted to live here was because of the human-centric approach. So cycling was a symptom of that, but it wasn't specifically about the cycling. But as a cyclist, it was really important for me. And when I arrived here and came across Cycle Space and the work that Anna was doing, it was just like, wow, this is just amazing. But I suppose for me, the lesson of looking at London is that it's a constant process of innovation, and it's the same for Amsterdam. It's what we were saying about the Copenhagenized thing, is that Amsterdam has come in for some criticism about not having the speed of innovation in the past, and certainly that's changing now with Cycle Space and the Bicycle Mayor program. And it's so funny to look at some of those scenes where you have images from Amsterdam in the 70s with the die-ins, and it's the same as the 2010s in London. We're going through the same process, but as we said, it's not going to be the same city. We don't want it to be the same city, but certainly we want to accelerate that change and to create a more livable city, and that requires a constant campaigning and constant innovation.
Okay. Anyone who's got a question or a statement for one of these people? Yeah, you and then you.
What I miss in the whole story is the e-bike. What do you consider as the position of the e-bike? Because I think that it opens great opportunities for people who travel to the city, to Amsterdam, for example, and are 20 or 30 kilometers away.
Anyone here who's got an opinion on e-bikes?
Well, I heard the program for D66, and they want to build like a bicycle highway from Amsterdam to Utrecht. And of course, like also the vervoerregio is working a lot on like building roads and making them sustainable for longer trips by e-bikes. So I think it's very important that we look into that more than we do now, to me.
And it's actually every time the discussion is going around about the bicycle and the scooter, I always add the e-bike as well as part of. I think the e-bike, it's really a positive new thing for cyclists. But we also should take a look at how the infrastructure should be built around it, and about new rules maybe.
Okay.
Oh.
Exactly.
There is, yeah.
I also have a remark here. I promised you a question or a statement as well, right?
There's already some fast lanes for e-bikes made to Zaandam and in Utrecht. So, and there's been 32 million to make new. So I think there's been working on. But my question was about the London. Well, I forgot my question.
Oh, maybe it will get to you. But
that's can I add something? That's true. That's definitely true. But like here it's the thing. Like the industry, the bicycle industry is sort of a big faster. They just want to push the e-bike into the market, and the infrastructure isn't ready yet in the rules. But as well, people aren't aware yet that there is a cyclist passing them, and with this speed that it almost has 40 kilometers per hour. So it's something that we really need. It's a good topic to bring on, because we it's something for the future as well, to get to different cities around, and we need to have a look how people will get around with it.
Is Cycle Space and our cycling mayor, are you also thinking about ways to better spread tourists who are cycling across our region, because we see a lot of tourists renting bikes and staying in the city center, whereas there's a lot of nice things to see. Just a few.
Just outside, where nobody's cycling there anyway, so they couldn't harm anyone. Yeah.
I can give an example. There's a project that we call Cycle Sense that we have been working on with some students from HVA. They're here in here as well, like Wouter and Bas. And we try to navigate tourists through the city more easy. So we are doing a very thorough research around this topic. I think it's very important. And it would make the streets safer and also more livable for the people in Amsterdam as well.
There's time for two important, nice, maybe not so important remarks, but just anything you wanted to add or say. Yes, that's number one.
I was wondering, the whole thing that I heard tonight was really thinking, all right, the bicycle is the answer, and people want to use the bicycle even though they don't know it yet. Do you actually think that there's people that just don't want to use the bicycle and want other means of transport, and that the
Like Daimler, for example, right?
might be, yeah?
It's a good question, Mabel. Do people really dream of bicycles when they're in their beds?
Yeah, to me, there's always maybe we are talking about mobility as a service often, like right now, and we want to promote something that is now called MAO, but it's a working title, mobility as a lifestyle. So we want to promote inside us. We want to promote people that move more often. Of course, people sometimes don't want to use a bike or never do want to use a bike. I don't know, but I think in the end, if you look at the future, if you look at us being in the office for the whole day and then going home in a Mercedes-Benz, it's not the future that we want as human beings. I think as we talk about human progress, it is more about mobility as a lifestyle and integrating this bike in this daily thing.
Okay,
that we
so
do.
it's a health issue.
It is.
Yeah.
And
And-
make
and-
it
and-
Big
happen.
time. Also like here, mental health.
It's mental health and
As well,
health.
yeah, and yeah.
Okay.
I think it's also just increasing options. It's not one other great thing about living here is that so many Dutch people themselves are car drivers. So what I see is more of this symbiotic relationship between car drivers and bicyclists, and things like drivers' education programs are so vastly different in the States. I mean, I don't think I ever saw the word bicyclist on my driving exam in California. I mean, probably, but whatever. I passed.
You pass anyway, yeah.
But as an American, getting a driver's license at 16, 15 and a half, getting your permit, that's something that's this goal, this attainment of freedom. And I think that's still seen here in the Netherlands. I mean, there's still communities and neighborhoods that still prioritize car driving in families, and it's not a big deal. And they also have bikes. So I don't think it's one or the other. It's about providing options and places and spaces for people to meet people and other people. So, yeah.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I've got the microphone now.
Yeah, yeah. Why not add something to it, Adam? Yeah.
Thank you. I was just going to say that it's quite interesting in London because it took a cyclist in Boris Johnson to kind of take that step change of investing things. But then the next mayor...
He's also the Brexit guy, right?
Yeah, we don't talk about him anymore. We don't like him.
No, because everybody... You seem to be in love with this guy.
No,
but we
I hate
know
him.
As, oh, you hate him now.
Yeah.
But
like
he
Sadiq
rides
Khan.
Do you hate him because he rides a bicycle? No, that's not...
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no.
You used to love him.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
I like Sadiq Khan. He's the current mayor. And he's actually... So we had Boris Johnson. He was a cyclist. Now we've got Sadiq Khan, and he's the son of a bus driver. And so he knows about transport. And for him, he's the one who's really kind of brought the step change investment in cycling because he sees that as part of this kind of multimodal transport approach. And for Londoners, in the first 5 days of this year, we crossed the legal threshold for the year in some parts for the air pollution. It's killing thousands and thousands of people in London each year. And that's one of the kind of key trigger points. And so I think the people now understand that investing in cycling is to encourage more people to cycle is, yes, it's great for the cyclists, but it's going to benefit everybody if we can free cars off the road, if we can make transport mobility much easier for everyone. And investing in cycling will free that up for everybody else.
Okay. Anyone here who's got a final important statement? So it needs to be important because it's going to be the final statement. Oh, yeah, you're not important, and yours is, right? Yeah.
Sorry. Are you also involving the ambassadors or people from the ambassadors in the different countries? I'm asking that because in Istanbul we met the previous ambassador, and he was really bicycle-minded, and he got actually some local mayor, some local important people to get to build infrastructure.
This was the Dutch ambassador in Istanbul.
Istanbul, yeah, the former Dutch ambassador. But for instance, at the moment, there is an ambassador who is not so cycle-minded. But so all this work of the former ambassador is a little bit lost.
It is, yes. Embassies and ambassadors. No, because I think there's, you can maybe compete with this remark.
Oh, well, mine was quite different. It was just, I mean, the whole tone on cycling is very positive. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I love cycling as much as anyone, but in my mind, I do have this sort of thing which keeps on nagging me, which is a city which cycles more always necessarily a livelier city? So does cycling make a city always livelier?
Let's keep these two. So there's one question, and I will look at you whether there's something to add, but I'm also wrapping things up. So there used to be ambassadors who were involved in spreading the word in other countries, saying, hey, we have this cycling experience. Why not use that all, even in Istanbul, right? That was statement number one. And the other statement was, does being a cycling city like Eindhoven or Enschede necessarily mean that you're a lively city? Are those two really connected, right?
Well, I think the first question was, are you talking already to ambassadors about the program, I think?
Embassies, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Dutch ambassador was really helping the cycling lobby in Istanbul. And now, because the nowadays ambassador, he's not so cycle-minded.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get a push, you know?
Yeah, no, that's
push the
definitely true. And actually, we are talking right now with some foreign affairs things. Now, well, we were thinking this is a good thing to get it started. So
okay, so yes, you are, and thank you for being made aware of this.
Yeah, please talk to Inge.
Yeah. And then Meredith on the lively question.
Oh, okay. I was also going to say that there was this directive from the I think it was the embassies here directing all the embassies in abroad that to bike to work. And that's such a great initiative by the embassies, and I think last summer before, we had several people from the embassies who were contacted by their local municipality, and they sent them local municipalities to the summer school that Marco and I host over the summer, and that was also another great opportunity for people from Eastern Europe.
Okay, and then maybe a final statement on this lively city.
You're really pushing us, Menno.
Yeah, I'm pushing you a bit because I don't want, otherwise we have nothing to discuss about with our whiskeys and cocktails downstairs at the bars, right? I would hate that.
Samuel's question on cycling, is it always positive or is it always encouraging, this active and vital environment? I think it would depend on our definition of cycling. We've already brought up e-bikes. We've brought up cargo bikes. There's a lot of different definitions of what we call cycling. Is it race cycling? Is it just normal bike cycling? Do we need individual lanes for each of these types of users? When going back to what I talked about earlier about, about the land use, about activities, about destinations, about, we didn't even talk about the social interactions. I mean, stoplights, for me, now that I have a child, right in front, are the most wonderful times of my day, where she's singing and she's pointing at things, and I get to stop and I get to kiss her on the cheek. I mean, that's something that that a green wave in Copenhagen, I wouldn't have that opportunity. So, we have to think.
That rail would still be nice, though. Yeah.
Yes, but I think to think critically about these opportunities that we have on a daily basis here, and how cycling can influence those activities.
Okay. So scientifically, you would say it depends on what you mean by cycling, but as a human being, you would say yes, definitely, given your own experiences. Adam, maybe you have the final word now. So you're
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But what you are going to say is really going to impress us and is going to stay with us all night, maybe all week.
Whiskey.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's going to be some nice new program for you to go to. Yeah, for example, March 6th, ruimte voor de startbijeenkomst Talk of the Town, and live the Groene Amsterdammer on sustainability on March 31st. If you like this program, we really want to continue organizing them. There's a pay as you like stand when you on the second floor, I think, and also when you leave the buildings. If you like this program and you want to support us in reorganizing or something like this, then give us some kind of donation. Then pay as you like. It's called not as you go, but as you like. And except for that, thank you so much for our guests. Thank you. It was really hot in here, and see you next time.